brings us to 5 to 9. We've been hearing this morning that cuts to the overseas aid budget expected to be announced, and the spending review could be permanent rather than temporary. We can talk to Justine, who was Secretary of State for International Development for 4 years under David Cameron, and is on the line. Morning to you.
Morning.
And you think this is a bad idea, presumably?
I think it would be a mistake because levelling up isn't just something we should be doing at home. It's also something we should be leading on abroad. And that's what the development and aid budget has always been about. It's been the right thing to do for the UK, playing a leading role globally, but also it's the smart thing to do, working upstream, stopping countries from falling into costly wars and stopping migration crises before they happen makes sense, and helping countries develop so they can become the trading markets of the future also makes sense, because we can create more opportunities abroad. It doesn't just help prevent migration, it's also how we can create more opportunities at home through trade.
You see, that description that you've just given, I think a lot of people would say is all sounds wonderful, but then they open the Daily Mail, for instance, this morning and see the UK's 81 million China giveaway, as they put it, things like a mascot for Shanghai, etc., which they say comes from the aid budget. In other words, a lot of it actually doesn't go to the kind of really fundamental stuff that is either good for people around the world or indeed particularly good for Britain.
I think there'll always be a debate on how effectively we spend that 0.7%. When I was Secretary of State for International Development, I dramatically cut back the Chinese aid programme because my view was that it was a rich enough country to be able to not need the UK taxpayer aid.
We shouldn't be giving them anything, should we?
I agree. And I think that it's a question of how we invest that money and doing it smartly rather than a question of the quantity. I think you have to see the 0.7% commitment as Britain playing a leading role in the world. We've always been a country that has taken the world's priorities and made them ours, whether that's on climate change, on security, latterly on COVID and developing vaccinations. And development is part of that. And that's why I think we should be very wary about stepping back from that.
But isn't that exactly the point, though? Sorry to interrupt. That's such a crucial point, though. If you believe in doing the things that are right and not the things that are wrong and wasteful, etc., then surely having the target is the wrong way to approach it. What you should be looking at is what you're doing rather than some arbitrary amount, some arbitrary proportion of gross national product.
And again, I think there'll always be a debate on how much money is spent on aid, but I think we get the world to step up by showing leadership. We've done that on both aid, but also on defence. I think there are many countries that don't meet those leadership questions. I think if we want more countries to invest more in defence, then actually stepping back from one of those other international targets is not going to be a sensible way to encourage them and persuade them to do that. From my perspective, I think Britain needs more influence in the world, not less. And that's why I think if we are going to live up to this global Britain mandate that I think the Prime Minister is quite right to say matters, I think this takes us further away from being able to demonstrate leadership in a wider world.
But does it, if we actually do the things that we think are good, it doesn't affect it at all, does it? For instance, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Oxford vaccine, when we're handing it around the world, and presumably some people will at least know that it comes from there. That's the kind of thing that makes a difference, isn't it?
Indeed, and I think you're making a very compelling argument for why aid and development matter and can also demonstrate UK leadership.
But not the target, that's the point.
Well, I've always felt the target is actually extremely important. Interestingly, there's always been cross-party support for this as well. When the original 0.7% bill went through Parliament, only a handful of MPs voted against it. I think the debate on how it's spent is a very relevant one. And I think there is a question about whether it's being spent in countries that frankly do not need UK taxpayer money
we got to
on
end it
aid
there.
spend.
Thank you.